Learning how to rest. It seems a little odd, doesn't it, that we need to learn how to rest? But we do. I know that I had to learn how to rest. With my moon, which is what drives you, lighting up the gate 54, which is in traditional human design, the gate of drive. I've been very engaged in my life. Let me just put it that way. And when I first came to human design, I started to think about this because human design teaches us that we all need to rest. And it's not just the non-sacral beings. Absolutely the non-sacral beings, the projectors, the manifestors, and the reflectors all really need to rest. And they live in a generator-dominated world because about 70% of the population are either pure generators or manifesting generators. And so for the non-sacral beings, it is vital to move away from the sacral beings and to allow that energy to drain out so that you can come back into your own energy and that then you can really rest. Because if you're always being bombarded by a generator's energy, it's going to be hard for you to truly rest. But even sacral beings need to rest. I can attest to that because I have burned out more than once, and I'm a pure generator and I generally have a lot of energy, but even I can burn myself out. And when I discovered human design and I started to take it seriously as a way to live, I asked myself this question, which is, how do I rest? Because I realized that I knew how to engage and be on and to create and so on, right? I knew how to do that and I knew how to collapse, basically. Like when I ran out of energy, I just boop, got horizontal, but I didn't have a lot in between. I didn't appreciate the value of rest. I think our culture does not appreciate the value of rest. Given the technology that we have today, we're living in a 24/7, 365 world where with electricity and the internet, you can literally be on any time of day doing all kinds of things, and people do. But this is not normal in the sense that it's not what was the norm for us as human beings for the vast majority of our existence. Remember that the internet's only been around about 20 years and electricity in the amount that we have it now has only been around 150 years. So this is a tiny, tiny blip on the history of humanity. Let's take a moment and think about what was more true for us and our ancestors, even up until 1900, okay? In the winter, days were short, nights were long, and it would get cold. And so there was a enforced rest time in the winter because there just wasn't enough light and there wasn't enough heat to really be engaging a lot at night. And what did we do at night? We did storytelling, we did craft making, we had conversation, we had games that we played, and we had love making. All of these things that we did in the evenings when we had enough candles or torches or whatever it was for us to have light for a certain amount of time and when it was warm enough. And we also had much longer periods of time in bed. Many years ago, when I was with a network marketing company, we had magnetic beds and we had far infrared quilts. And so we were all about sleep. I did a bunch of research about sleep. And what I discovered was that, and before electricity, before this really technological change, people spent on average like 14 hours a night in bed in the wintertime, which makes sense, right? It's too cold and it's too dark to be doing anything else. So that made for much, much longer periods of sleep. It also made for a very different kind of sleep cycle where go to sleep for a few hours, 4 or 5 hours, and then you would wake up and you'd be awake for a few hours in the middle of the night. Many babies were probably made during that time, but there was also dreaming that happened. There was a lot of just musings and ruminations and imaginations and probably being in a semi-conscious state where a lot of creativity happened. And then you'd go back to sleep for another 5 or 6 hours. And so you would have a very long time in bed. And we've lost that because who spends 14 hours a night in bed anymore? I mean, for me, getting myself while I'm resting here in the winter to be in bed for 10 hours is an accomplishment. Like, stay in bed, stay in bed. I keep making myself go back to sleep. When I'm really good at it, I can do it for 12 hours. But I certainly don't do it routinely, and it's not generally the way that I live. But we've really lost some of our dreaming capacity, I think some of our creativity, because now we rely on our technology to provide entertainment for us, rather than for us to be generating our own entertainment. And we get into these cycles of staying up late, watching television, watching movies, and then all that light that's coming in from the screens interrupts our sleep, makes it hard for us to sleep, and then we don't sleep very well, and we get up and then we go back at it, right? In our current society, we've made exhaustion normal. Being sleep deprived is normal. Barely having enough energy to get through the day, so by the time your day ends, whatever that means for you, you have dinner, you have a glass of wine, you watch something on TV, and then you go to bed, right? Like, that's about how much energy many people have. But that's not really the vitality that's available to us when we align more with the cycles of nature. In human design, it's the 515, that channel, the channel of rhythm, that tells us about the cycles of the natural world, the patterns of the natural world. So this happens during a day, it happens during a season, it happens during a year. And when we can align more with those natural rhythms, then we have a lot more energy when we're engaged, and we have more deeper periods of rest. You'll find that it's very beneficial if you build cycles of rest into your life on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and a yearly basis. So you just take this time, as we're going to be going into this new year, to be thinking about how can you build more rest and rejuvenation time in. And I'm not just talking about watching more things on screens. One of the things that I realized is that I rest really well by reading fiction. Even though I have a literature PhD, I had stopped reading fiction. I hadn't read fiction for, 20 years, something like that. It was a long time. And when I was learning how to rest again, I was like, oh, I'm going to try reading fiction. I find it very restful. Yes, it is entertainment that's coming outside of me, but it's not on the screens. I think that reading literature is actually quite different than watching movies or watching TV. I do think that storytelling can be very restful. One of the things you might want to try doing is telling your own stories or swapping stories with other people that help you to digest and integrate your experience, help you to express some of your kernels of wisdom. That actually can be quite restful, and receiving that from other people. I know that, many ancient people spent a lot of time telling stories around the fire, especially in midwinter. So that's definitely something that you can do. My friend Christina Rilo has written this really great book, Overwhelmed and Over It. And she talks a lot about natural cycles and how we can get in alignment with them. So if you want some more support, that's a really great book to get. There's another one called Sabbath, which is about creating these rest times and how do we restore. So that's another book that I highly recommend if you want some support with this. The main thing to understand is that we are part of the natural world. We're not separated from it, even though our technology conditions us to believe that we are actually separate. But we are not. We are a part of it, and everything in nature has a cycle of rest, whether that's nighttime, where the different animals and the plants that are active during the day rest in the evening, and then other animals that are asleep during the day become more active at night, or whether that's through the season. I live in a little bit of a schizophrenic environment because during this time of year, most of the plants and the trees have gone dormant and have lost their leaves or slowed down. But then when the rains come, we also get grass that grows like crazy and everything becomes green. And then there are certain other vegetables like collard greens or things in the brassica family, which love this time of year, and they actually flourish because it's not hot anymore. So it's a little bit of something's going dormant and something's actually awakening and growing more. That has more to do with the wet dry cycles than it does with the warm cold cycles, but even so. And in the environment that you live in, I'm sure that there are different cycles. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, we're in the winter time. So attuning to that and giving yourself more time to just lie on the sofa and not do anything, or to ruminate on certain things, just reflect, to write in your journal if you want to take baths, to take walks if you can, if that's available to in where you live, to be quiet and give yourself fallow time. We have this idea if we're not doing something, then we're no longer of value. That is just not the case at all. We need cycles of expansion and cycles of contraction, which I like to call cycles of integration. Just remember, unmitigated growth, that's what cancer does, right? We don't want to be that. We don't want to do that. We need both for our own individual health and for the collective health of humanity and of our world. We need to learn to have these cycles again, because our economy has gotten built on this idea of constant growth, always growing. But unfortunately, that's based on devouring our earth and devouring the so-called natural resources of our earth. It's kind of a cancerous kind of growth. So what you can do right now is to start building in cycles of rest into your own life and encourage other people in your life to do that as well. And if you're a projector and you're not getting invitations, or you're a manifester and you're not feeling the creative impulses going, or if you're a reflector and you're not getting clarity about things, it's likely that you need more rest, because the universe is not going to be bringing you invitations or creative impulses to act on, or clarity about where to go in your life, if what you really need to do is to rest. Same thing for generators and manifesting generators. If you're feeling like you're not getting things to respond to, like you're there and you're like, okay, I want these things, and yet you're depleted on the inside, the universe is not going to bring you things to respond to that then you're going to take action on. I've become super aware of this over the course of this fall, because every time I really engaged in something and then I wanted to follow it up with something else without giving myself a cycle of rest, things stopped coming to me. Then when I gave myself a cycle of rest, all of a sudden things started coming to me, whether that was more clients or more readings or more opportunities or whatever. Then I would engage in that for a while. And then if I got really busy for something and I tried to have something come out of that without a cycle of rest, again, everything would slow down. And I'd be like, okay, I need a cycle of rest. Okay, give myself a few days to just lie around, read a novel and take baths and take a walk and not do much of anything. And the next thing I know, things are starting to come to me again. So whatever your type is in human design, remember that cycles of rest, whether it's in the will center, which works to rest, whether it's in the 515, which remember we all have, even though it may not be defined in your chart, are all telling us to rest. And certainly we know this the most with the non-sacral beings, but it's really true for all of us. Particularly, for example, if you have no motors defined, right? Then you definitely need cycles of rest. I want to end today by sharing with you a video that I actually created last summer, but I didn't put up on YouTube, and it's about Sloth Yoga. This is a practice that I do and that I recommend to clients a lot, and it is where you basically stay in your pajamas and you stay in bed for as long as you possibly can, only getting up to go to the bathroom, have something to drink, have something to eat, and then you get right back in bed. And if you can do nothing, that's best. But if you need to read something, that's okay. But the idea is that you're kind of as still and as quiet as you can be. And you meet the part of you that wants to be engaged, and you help that part learn how to relax and calm down. This is a great thing to do for a whole day, for a whole weekend, for a whole week. If you can manage it, it's very, very rejuvenating. When I was in graduate school and I was working so hard, I can't even tell you. And I would get to the end of a term and I had finished my big paper. I had to do a big paper every term, like an article quality paper. And I would have a week of rest, or maybe 2 weeks if it was winter time. And I would do this before I even understood all this. I would spend a whole day in bed, literally with the covers over my head, because my mind was so kind of fried from everything that I had been doing. And it then enabled me to go and enjoy the rest of the break that I had. So here is my little video on Sloth Yoga. I hope you enjoyed that Sloth Yoga, and I invite you to put it into your calendar now. Many blessings, much love. Bye for now.